Hello everyone, and welcome to this channel. My name is Michael Marino, and before we get started, I just wanted to say that whoever you are, wherever you might be, you are very welcome here in this space with me. And I'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. Maybe I should do the video with these fancy shades on. So today I wanted to talk about core wounding because I had this really brilliant breakthrough with my therapist the other day, and I thought, mother of God, I've got to share this with people. So hopefully you find it helpful. So the background of this is basically... And so basically what happened was my therapist was curious why I wanted to have this joint session with a very close family member of mine. And he asked me, what do you think will be the benefit of this? What do you desire? What do you suppose you both will gain from this if we do it? All those sorts of very therapist-like questions. And I had a pretty easy time answering those questions, and then he threw me this curveball. Probably the curviest curveball I've ever been thrown in my life. He said, what is the core wound that you're trying to heal in this relationship? What? And of course I'm like, I'm sorry, what? And of course I was kind of like, sorry, what? The core wound? It really took me a minute to think about, and I offered up that, maybe it was the time they tried to choke me to death. Very dramatic, very traumatic experience. Perhaps that's the core wound. But he just kept looking at me like this. But he just kept looking at me like, go on. And so finally I got back to the age of 3. Some people might be thinking, how can you remember that far back? I really can't, but said, some of my earliest memories are of my parents screaming and shouting at each other and throwing things at each other. I remember one time my mother ripped a landline phone out of the wall with the cords hanging out and hucked it at my dad, and he ducked and missed it. And he picked up a steak knife and threw it back at her. She ducked and missed it. And I was standing on a step stool. Like I said, I was about 3 or 4 years old when this happened. And I was standing there screaming at the top of my lungs to try and get them to stop. And it was like I wasn't there. I was invisible. And that's when the light bulb went off. So your core wound, your fear, your biggest fear in life is what? Not being heard, not having a voice, if you will. And it might be different if this was an isolated incident or it only happened maybe once or twice. But no, this was consistent life for me as a child. My parents were always arguing, always at odds with each other. Physical altercations, emotional, verbal abuse of each other. And I was always stuck in the middle and invisible. And so it created what my counselor calls this core wound. And so sort of the conclusion was, so my desire to have this joint counseling session with this family member was to have a voice and to make them hear me, if you will. which we both decided this person was not ready for. But that's not the only thing that I got out of this whole core wounding conversation. I worked as a journalist for the past 2 years, and one of the core ethical guidelines of this job is to give voice to the voiceless. Now, for those of you who are ADD or autistic like me, remember that we're talking about how my biggest fear was not having a voice. I didn't have one as a kid. So, of course, it would make sense that I have this burning passion for this job, this career that I found in high school, where one of the core tenets is giving voice to the voiceless. And so I got really good at telling other people's story. You know, I've actually written a couple of stories that won awards based on someone else's experience. And so my hope for this channel is to be able to tell my story now. I can tell other people's story. And now it's time for me to share mine. And we'll delve more into that in future videos. But if you're out there and you're struggling or wondering why can I not break out of these unhealthy cycles in my life, or maybe you're just feeling a bit down, I encourage you to think about, what is your core wound? The other really important thing that I got out of that was this sense of peace, you know, because I've been wrestling with this relationship and wanting to have a right relationship with this family member who I love very much, but there's a lot of trauma and things that we need to heal from. And knowing what was at the center of it all really just gave me this sense of peace and awareness that I've never quite experienced before. It felt like I'd climbed a mountain, turned back around, and made it back to the bottom, and I could rest. I could rest easy. So hopefully this has been helpful. Again, thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. If you did find it helpful, please like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz down below. And until next time, please everybody, be safe and be kind to each other.